The Great Gatsby, a classic 1920s tale by F. Scott Fitzgerald about the American dream. And like most great novels, it has a shitty movie named after it. We're introduced to Nick Carraway, the main protagonist of the story. He lives in West Egg, New York, one of the richer parts of the state. He's on his way to meet up with his cousin Daisy and her husband Tom. Keep in mind, Nick is one of the many few sane characters in the story, so enjoy seeing him by himself as often as possible.
Nick Carraway!
Here we meet Tom, who in the story is proclaimed to be this big behemoth of a man. Apparently a football player and all this stuff. In the movie, however, we get what Timmy Turner would look like in 20 years. He picks up Nick and they drive over to their house. And here, we meet the crazy cousin Daisy.
I'm paralyzed with happiness.
At first she seems nuts, but later on she kinda gets more stable. This isn't the best impression of her.
I love a persistent whale.
Well, I love a drink.
I bet you do. And then we meet Jordan, one of the other few sane characters in the story. Her and Nick end up hooking up, so that's no surprise. Yeah, also, a lot of the people in this movie are going to be sweating. I don't know why, just every scene someone has to perspire, apparently.
You must know Gatsby.
Oh, he's my neighbor.
Gatsby? What Gatsby?
Daisy overhears them talking about Gatsby and is in shock. I mean, is it really a surprise the movie's named after him? So, they talk about this holiday coming up. And no, it's not Christmas or Halloween or anything special. Instead, it's the longest day of the year. Yeah, like anyone gives a fuck about that. Daisy has a plan to do something on that day, but instead just has this weird, uncomfortable conversation.
We ought to plan something.
All right. What do we plan? What do people plan? Look at that. My little finger, it's all black and blue.
As cool as the 20s looked, if people really talk like this, I would not want to go there. Don't get me wrong, I have awkward conversations every now and then, but this is just awful. Tom reads, and decides to share that with Nick. Apparently you read a book about how white people are better than everyone else.
See, the point is that if we don't watch out, the white race will be utterly submerged.
That's actually true, even Louis C.K. said that.
I don't want to go to the future and find out what happens to white people, because we're going to pay hard for this shit. You got to know that.
Jordan talks about how Tom is cheating on Daisy, which that'll play a role later on in the story.
I don't.
Tom's got a woman in New York. She might have the decency not to telephone him at dinner time, don't you think?
And here we're introduced to Jay Gatsby, the anti-hero of the novel. A lot of the first impressions for these characters aren't the best, but not for Gatsby. He's actually really cool in this story. He's weird, but in a good way. So we see him standing out of his house looking at a green light, which represents his hope for his dreams and shit. Yeah, I guess it does kind of look weird seeing him just standing out there. Where'd he go? Gatsby's the host of a circus. Now, actually, he just throws parties every now and then and invites a few people, and then a bunch of them show up. Mainly because he's got so many nice things in his house and he's rich and everything. People just show up just because. And then we see this pig. Gross. Then we move on to the Valley of Ashes, where the first thing we see are the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleberg. He's meant to represent that God is looking down on everyone and he sees what's going on, basically. I'm not a big fan of this movie, but the camera work's awesome, so I'll give it that.
Wilson!
Wilson's the lovable goof who owns the gas station and mechanic shop thing.
When are you going to sell me that car?
Next week. I've got my man working on it now.
We're also introduced to his wife, Myrtle, who Tom is having an affair with. Why he chose her, I don't fucking know. Like, nothing about her is great. I feel bad for Nick throughout the whole thing. He's just kind of here for all these situations.
I want you to get on the next train.
This fucking music. They start driving and then they end up talking about dogs. Yeah, you're gonna hear dog throughout this scene a lot.
Dogs.
Especially in that accent. Dog.
That dog's a bitch!
They end up going to Tom's apartment where they have another party. We're introduced to Myrtle's sister. Forget her name. They start talking about Gatsby and how he's a Nazi or whatever.
He's German.
Somehow people at this party have the power to cancel out any background noise. I don't know how they do it. Sometimes I can't even hear people who are 10 feet away from me. How can they possibly hear each other when there's people and music in the background?
Tom was sitting opposite me. He had on a dress suit.
Tom accidentally steps on their new dog, and Myrtle's a little pissed.
Myrtle, don't slam the door in my teeth.
Myrtle finds out about Daisy and is constantly repeating her name over and over again, getting Tom a little bit more pissed. The steroids kick in, and he does this.
Daisy! Daisy! Daisy!
Oh cool, he's left-handed. They end up hugging it out and pretend the whole thing never happened. So Nick later on gets invited to another one of Gatsby's parties.
Mr. Gatsby would be honored if you would attend his little party tonight.
You're about to hear the same song over and over again. They play the same song for at least a solid minute. It's a small complaint, but holy fuck does it get on your nerves after a while. What they could have done with this was like just play people dancing for like 15 seconds and then move on. It's the same song on a loop. It's like a broken record, but worse. I know it's a small complaint and maybe I'm making a big deal about it, but for fuck's sake, just play a little bit of the song and move on and get some dialogue, because this is bullshit.
Oh, thank you.
Son of a bitch, what is your problem?
So eventually people start sharing rumors at the table about all of Gatsby's secrets. We get to meet this funny drunk. She's a riot. This old guy starts talking about his fat wife, and John Goodman pours wine on him. A Corleone family member shows up and elbows him. The mafia dude says Gatsby wants to see Nick, so he takes him to his office.
How do you do, old sport? I'm Gatsby.
Nick Carraway. It's a pleasure.
So Gatsby and Nick meet for the first time. It reminds me of like a couple that dated online and then they meet up in real life and they have nothing to talk about because they're just getting to know each other. It's kind of like that. It's like 1920s internet dating.
I thought we should get acquainted since we're neighbors. I hope you're enjoying yourself.
Yes. Thank you.
If there's anything you want or need...
No. Everything's fine. Thank you.
Good.
It's very nice.
Good.
It's a lovely night for the party.
Yeah.
There's nothing really to talk about. There's a lot of pauses, and they're just kind of, they're getting to know each other. Eventually, they plan to see each other again within the week. Okay, this song again. Look at that Rolls Royce. That is beautiful. They drive around for a little bit, talk about war, their income, and Daisy. Nick hooks up Gatsby on a date with Daisy, and they're so shocked to see each other, they don't do anything.
We haven't met for many years.
They literally just stare at each other. I know it's the 1920s, and it's not like they could just text somebody or check their Facebook or whatever, but even standing for that long is painful. Nick's like, fuck this, and he goes to smoke. He comes back after a while, and they still haven't moved. I mean, what could they possibly be thinking about that they can't just share it with each other? Gatsby keeps a creepy record of all of Daisy's past information. Some people would be creeped out. Daisy, however, doesn't think anything weird of it. A dead seagull washes up on shore, and Nick decides to pick him up with his bare hands. He doesn't even do anything helpful, he just puts him on a higher rock. Doesn't even wash his hands or anything. What a beast. A gross beast. Everybody comes inside for dinner, where Gatsby's introduced to Daisy's daughter, and he shits himself.
How do you do?
Say how do you do?
How do you do?
I should probably mention that Gatsby has this long-lasting relationship with Daisy despite her being married to Tom. They met a while ago, but Gatsby just won't let her go. Being reminded that Daisy already has a family with Tom brings him down a little bit. They decide to go into town, kick some rocks, and throw roses at each other. For whatever reason, they swap cars on the drive. I don't know why. On the way, Tom gets gas at Wilson's, and Myrtle sees him. She tries to get his attention by knocking on the window, but he can't hear her. This whack job punches the fucking window, and even then she couldn't get his attention. And then this fucked up scene happens. That didn't happen in the book, mainly because it shouldn't have happened. Whoever's responsible for adding the scene is a boner. And moving on, they decide to have tea. The weather is so blazing hot that everyone in this room is sweating. Gatsby and Tom subtly argue for a little bit, and then Gatsby drops the bomb on Tom.
Your wife doesn't love you.
Tensions rise, and then this happens. What the fuck? Back at Wilson's, him and Myrtle fight over their relationship. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Ecclesburg are referenced again, reminding Myrtle that God is always watching. Nick, Jordan, and Tom drive home and discover a crowd of people at Wilson's. Tom thinks his business is suddenly booming, that punk ass.
Wilson will finally have some business at last.
In reality, Myrtle's dead. Wilson's extremely upset, and Tom just seems more pissed than heartbroken. Nick meets up with Gatsby in front of his house. Apparently Daisy's the one that ran over Myrtle, but Gatsby's gonna take the blame for her. What a swell guy. Wilson's random friend tries to cheer him up. Unfortunately, he ends up being ditched, and Wilson just wanders around the city. From this point on, Wilson becomes a psycho. It's kinda like Myrtle's craziness rubbed off on him. He stops by Tom and Daisy's house, being terrifying as ever, like a fucking weirdo just staring at him.
Who is that man, do you know? That's Mr. Wilson, ma'am. From the garage up by the big sign.
Daisy realizes who that is, and suddenly guilt hits her. So she runs. Like always. She's always running. Like a lot. It's weird. Everybody's weird in this movie. Nick and Gatsby have their last talk, and honestly it's the best part of the whole movie.
Nick? Thank you.
They're a rotten crowd. You're worth the whole damn bunch put together.
These two provide a great, heartwarming scene that the movie really needed. It honestly redeems the whole thing. Gatsby jumps in his pool and takes time to relax. And apparently he has an addiction to acid, because he's seeing and hearing Daisy.
I love you, Jay.
Daisy?
Wilson casually strolls through the house. We never see how he got in, so I'm just gonna assume the door was open. This $1 million house just leaves the front door open. Unbelievable. Oh, he's got a sack, like most psychos. And there's a gun in it. I know he's meant to look intimidating and scary and all, but those blue eyes are beautiful. Wilson shoots Gatsby 5 times, and saves the last bullet for himself. Reporters and investigators come to the scene of the crime. These douchey kids graffiti on a dead man's house. Fuck you. Nick ends up meeting Gatsby's dad, Mr. Gats. They mainly just talk and reminisce about Gatsby and his past. They were the only ones at Gatsby's funeral, which ends up pissing off Nick because he realizes how awful Daisy and Tom were. Nick's at a dinner or something, I don't fucking know. Tom stops by and tells Nick how he basically blamed Gatsby for everything. His defense was that Wilson could have killed him. What a cock. The movie ends with Nick looking out into the green light, realizing that Gatsby's dream was over. Overall, this movie was alright. I know the book is always going to be better, but this was kind of a letdown. You'd expect a great book to have a decent movie. However, a lot of the weird, stupid shit that goes on just kills the experience. The movie could have been better if the characters were just normal and not fucking weirdos. I haven't seen the new version, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's a lot better. And that was my review on Great Gatsby. Appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you next time.